Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here at Earth and Sky. Those of you joining us online, we appreciate you. We always value your likes, your comments, your loves, your feedback. Subscribing to our channel definitely makes our day and brightens us up each time we see one of those new subscribers. When you subscribe, if you hit the bell button, you can choose how often you want to get your notifications. If you want to see all of our videos or just an occasional video, that's up to you, but hit that bell button so you can choose. Today I wanted to talk a bit about fear, because there is a lot of fear that's going on in a whole lot of different ways, it seems like, in our society lately. Some very specifically that I'm going to get into, but fear really is a natural human emotion. But the problem with the fear comes in when you start allowing yourself to make decisions where you're reacting based on the fear instead of thinking it through a bit, instead of just taking into consideration what the fear is triggering in you, trying to figure out if the fear is valid, and figuring out how you should react based on it. Problems definitely occur when you jump into that fight or flight mode and you start reacting very quickly just based on fear, and it can be easy sometimes to lose our heads in figuring things out and looking at the common sense of things too. Oftentimes when people react very quickly to fear, it can lead to a lot of problems. Often arguments happen from jumping into fear, and miscommunication happens because people are reacting out of fear. Sometimes even wars are started simply out of fear without a real solid foundation behind it. There are so many instances where fear can lead to destruction, arguments, war. Sometimes fear can prevent you from doing something you love. Maybe there's something that you'd really like to do, but you're just afraid to take some of those initial steps. And often people miss out on so much in their whole lives based on that fear. They're afraid to take those first steps. Fear of success can be a huge thing for people, where you have a goal, you may know how to implement it, you may have everything it takes and you want to so bad, but fear holds you back and you just don't take the steps that you need to take because you're afraid of success or you're afraid of failing, either of those. Fear of rejection may cause you not to reach out to a loved one. Maybe you'll miss out on a relationship simply because you're afraid of that rejection that could come through. There's another problem that comes up when we have that fear of them. And them can mean many different things. Often it seems in our culture today, and this has been going on for a long time too, people have a fear of other people and other people that may not agree with you. There's a fear that leads to an us versus them mentality, which can be very dangerous for society, can be very dangerous for a community when you start getting into us versus them thinking. And the fear of what I was perceived of as them or the other side or the other people can cause us to do a lot of things if you're reacting just based on fear, instead of taking a step back and recognizing that whoever them is, those are also people, and they have pretty much the same concerns and wants and likes as you, even if their opinions vary drastically on how they feel we should get to that point. There's a lot going on with political fear on both sides of the aisle. On both sides, people are very fearful of what happens if the other side takes over. And on both sides, people are worried about their families. They're worried about their community. They're trying to figure out what they think would be best for the world based on what their values are. But in that manifesting, they develop this strong fear of the other side. And really, when we can come to balance and we find a way to have that within our lives in every aspect, to have that pendulum kind of swinging back and forth, we find out how to have balance, how to release fear, how to take action in ways that really require our logic and our thinking and our common sense instead of reacting out of fear. it works out so much better in the long run for all of these different instances. So what I wanted to talk about a bit today is the fear that's going on with COVID-19. It's the new version of the coronavirus that is spreading around the world. It is definitely causing an impact in a lot of communities. And I think there's two different impacts that are happening. There's the impact that's happening from the virus, which is a very serious thing to pay attention to. And then there's the societal impact that is happening from people reacting so much out of fear and not necessarily in proportion to what they can be doing to be taking care of themselves and to be taking care of their loved ones and their community. I think that we've seen this pretty much from the beginning after it had spread so widely through Wuhan. And within this, as I'm making comparisons, talking about some of the statistics, I want to cover some numbers with this between both influenza, which we've been dealing with for quite some time, and then also some of the numbers that are happening with the coronavirus. It's not to say that these are comparable. It's not to say that there's a direct comparison between either of them, but just to gain some perspective about how you can maybe take care of yourselves even after the coronavirus has passed through. Just to keep some of the numbers in your head too, to try to keep maybe some of your fear limited so that you're reacting in a way that is appropriate with what's going on and being able to take care of yourself and your family and your loved ones, that especially those that are older or those that have immune systems that are repressed, which is often the same thing that we worry about with influenza. Influenza also impacts children a lot too. In the 2019-2020 season, so that's this season, from October through the current time, actually the statistics go through February 29th, was the most current that I could find. They were estimating within just the US with influenza, 34 million to 49 million people have been affected. And there have been 16 to 23 million office visits in doctors' offices, 350,000 to 620,000 hospitalizations, and to date this year, we have 25,000 confirmed cases that died directly from the flu. They're estimating this flu season about 20 to 52,000 deaths overall just from influenza. In the last flu season, 2018-2019, there were 95,000 people that died from the flu. This is not something that's talked about very often. It's something that we've dealt with for a long time. In 2017, 2018, in the flu season, 61,000 people died. That's just within the US. That's not counting worldwide. That's something that is just here within the US for those statistics. But a lot of times people don't fear the flu because so often people get the flu, or we have family members that get the flu, and we're used to that. It's something that we know that we deal with. Most people generally will recover from it. Sometimes it's a very hard illness to deal with. There's a lot of suffering that happens with it. Again, all of those hospitalizations, there's a lot of taxing that happens within the healthcare system from the flu, but as a general, when the flu first came out, I'm sure it created much more panic and fear, but as the decades have gone on, we've come to terms with knowing what we can try to do, mitigate the symptoms, wash your hands, stay home, try to protect yourself. I think because people don't fear the flu as much, far too often people will still go out in public, they'll still go to work, they'll still try to continue all of their lives while spreading the illness to so many other people, which is why we have so many millions of people that get the flu every single year. Coronavirus at this point worldwide has infected, as of March 11th at 10 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, coronavirus worldwide has infected 125,643 people and has resulted in 4,607 deaths. 67,000 people have recovered fully. And of the current basically 54,000 people that have coronavirus, 48,000 have a very mild form of it. So they have coughing, fever, just mild symptoms. They're expected to make a very easy full recovery of it, and about 6,000 are serious cases. So when you compare that with the millions and millions of people with the influenza and the tens of thousands of people every single year, almost 100,000 people last year that have died from influenza, there's a lot of panic that's going on in the world. Yes, this needs to be taken care of very seriously. Yes, we need to address it. Yes, we need to take precautions, but have some common sense as you're doing this. One of the things that inspired me to realize I needed to do a video on this was when I was watching a friend of mine do a video in Japan, and he was talking about how all of a sudden he went to the store and there was no toilet paper to be found in any of the stores in Japan. And so then he realized maybe this is actually affecting him as well. And a couple days later, the government did a public service announcement because people were afraid that the toilet paper, which was made in the factories in China, would not continue to be made, and so they needed to buy sometimes months worth at a time. And the government made a public service announcement saying, remember, our toilet paper is made in Japan that we have in this country. It's not even made in China. There's no worry with running out of a supply of that. That fear is what kind of has started to spread around the country. It was a few hours after that that I was talking to a friend of mine in Arizona, and she mentioned trying to go to the store and they were all out of toilet paper as well. She's trying to renovate her home, and paper towels were very hard to come by too. It's hard to sand and paint when you don't have paper supplies to kind of help with cleaning up afterwards. And she said the shelves are just emptying out of all of the paper products. A few hours after that, I heard that that's becoming a problem in the Detroit area as well, where stores are starting to empty out of the paper products. And then I heard about somebody who went to a store and bought 27 bottles of soap for themselves to make sure they had plenty of soap to wash their hands. But the problem with that is if you're clearing out the store, then other people can't buy those supplies that they need as well. And we need everybody to be thoroughly washing their hands. So please, as you're feeling like you need to stock up on things, or if you're feeling like you need to take certain extra precautions for yourself, also consider what other people in the community need as well. If you're clearing out the store shelves for yourself, that might mean that your fellow neighbor or your friends that are going to the store after you, or people that you don't know but that are in your community, aren't able to get the supplies that they need. Please consider your impact on everybody within the community with the actions that you're doing. I think when people are going out buying 10 or 27 bottles of soap at a time, they're really reacting based on fear instead of reacting based on really common sense, as well as how to take the precautions that are needed. In the epicenter of the coronavirus, 81,000 people in China have been affected. That's where the virus, this version of coronavirus, was first detected, so it's grown the most there as well. They weren't aware exactly of what it was when it started, which added to it multiplying faster than they could really contain. But keep in mind, with it being 81,000 people in China, much of that within Wuhan, there are 1.4 billion people. So that's still a really relatively low number compared to the country, but where it is, part of the virus is that it spreads very quickly without having symptoms showing as when you're first infected with it, and being able to carry it while not knowing that you're a carrier because you don't even realize that you're sick. But please, even knowing that, know how to take the precautions. Don't react by living in fear, reacting just on fear, but take the right precautions and keep perspective with it as well. Within Italy, there are 60 12.5 million people in the country, and 12,000 of them have coronavirus. Within the U.S., there are 327 million people. It has just recently spread here, and there are 1,100 cases. The vast majority of those are very, very mild symptoms. At the same time that we're seeing this virus starting to kind of grow, and there are a lot of precautions that you should take, that I was speaking with my doctor about this, and they said they've noticed a huge decline in influenza virus because people are actually washing their hands. People are actually taking care of themselves if they are sick. They're starting to stay home, as you always should when you're sick, because anytime you have a virus, regardless of what the virus is, you're at risk of spreading that to other people. And so really taking time to take downtime for yourself, washing your hands, sneezing and coughing into a tissue, washing your hands afterwards, seems like such common sense, yet so many people don't do it. They've actually noticed a 60% decline in influenza over the last 2 weeks, because over the last 3 weeks, people are washing your hands, counting to 20, making sure it's 20 to 30 seconds while you massage the soap into your hands, and it makes such a big difference. If we did that all the time, imagine how many less deaths we would have from influenza, how much less suffering, how much less devastating it would be to the economy when people have the flu every year. It's so easy. So I hope people will take to heart the fact of really taking these steps, doing these precautions all the time. If you are washing your hands and you are struggling to make sure you do it for those 20 or 30 seconds, give yourself a nice hand massage. Really feel it as you massage it into the palms of your hands and your fingers. You can actually make it feel like a really good thing while you're clearing off all of the germs. Teaching your children how to wash their hands well, encouraging other people to wash their hands really well. It's your best line of defense. Not touching your face, some of those other very common sense things that we don't always think about. Avoiding really large crowds at this point is actually a really good idea, because that's where a lot of it can spread. There has been one person that had the coronavirus that they considered a super spreader, because the person went to 3 different churches knowing that they had symptoms, and that as a super spreader she impacted, I think, 31 people. She was the most active spreading person. And so it's very simple to just really notice if you are sick, to just stay home. Protect those loved ones around you. Even if you feel like you're okay and you want to power through it, think about the elderly person that you might come in contact, or the single mother that has MS, or any of those people that are more fragile within our community, and just stay home. Or if you do have to go out, wear a mask to protect, to keep those germs from spreading onto other people. If you are not sick, you do not need to wear a mask. I was seeing people when I was in Italy starting to wear masks, and I've been hearing in Arizona they're doing that as well now, and the suggestion is definitely not to do that if you're not sick, but if you are sick, not just for this virus, but if you have the flu next year or the following year, if you wear a mask, it's so much more considerate for everyone else around you. And so if you start to really bring some perspective to it, don't lose sleep over it, don't agonize. I've talked to some people who are really paralyzed with fear over this virus. They're almost in agony. They aren't sleeping well. They're so afraid to go out, even to the grocery store, and they're just terrified of the virus coming into them. Keep in mind the numbers are so low when you look at it in comparison to the population. They're so low in comparison to the influenza that we have frequently, that is a very hard thing to deal with as well. Just keep in mind the perspective of those numbers, and do take care of taking care of yourself. I have some things that I'll be changing for my classes to make sure we have best practices with what the World Health Organization is recommending, what the International Center for Reiki is recommending, to make sure that we're keeping our center up with all of those policies. And I encourage all of you to do that as well. Make sure if you have a place where you work, you're cleaning and disinfecting your workspace. Again, I can't emphasize enough about proper hand washing, but remember that as you're dealing with people, as you're talking to people, if you encounter people that are sick, certainly keeping your social distancing, making sure you're 3 to 6 feet away, but treat them with kindness too. Don't treat somebody like a leper just because you see that you're afraid they're sick. Keep in mind that everybody is a person. We all have our lives that we are dealing with. We all have emotions that we're dealing with. I had heard of a friend of mine that had recently come back from Italy as well, and her young child was being harassed at school because mother was telling all of the other people that her child could have coronavirus, and so that fear was spreading with all of the children harassing this one little girl, and that's not okay. It's not an okay way to react, but that is what happens when people allow their actions to be guided by fear instead. So please remember in these challenging times to keep a level head, be responsible, be considerate of those other people around you that may have very fragile immune systems. Don't act out of fear. Avoid those large crowds of 100 people or more. Wash your hands. Know that as you're doing that, these habits are something you should keep long into the future, and we'll see a great decrease in influenza in future years as well. If you're sick, stay home. Take your vitamin C, take your Reiki, your vitamin D. If you do Reiki, that is one of the best ways, in my opinion, to boost your immune system. At the Reiki Center, we're all really encouraging everybody, make sure you're doing your Reiki every day. Do Reiki for yourself, and also add in a Reiki meditation where you're sending Reiki out to others within your community and to the world. The world could really use that extra boost of Reiki right now. So do it for yourself, maybe specify it for other loved ones, and also for the community. Maybe do some Reiki specifically for those who are sick with the virus as well. It's one of the greatest ways to boost your immune system. Be flexible, take care to practice good hygiene, and please act out of love, not out of fear. I hope this has helped you to give some thought to your day as we are in these challenging and very interesting times with this new version of the coronavirus that's going around, and all that it can maybe churn and up and bring up to thought with other viruses as well, how to protect yourself. Maybe this can be used as a great learning time to create greater health in many future years as well. I hope you have a fantastic week, everybody, and we will see you next week.